welcome to your planning committee. You'll see a new face along here, and with respect, so I'm not going to try and pronounce your surname, but the gentleman's Christian name is Ola, and he's our solicitor for the evening. Okay, sir? Right, minutes of the previous planning committee. Will you wish us on the track record, please?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Apologies for absence.
Councillor David Smith.
Right, we've got another couple missing, but they haven't given any apologies, so they may turn up presumably. Right, declaration of interest. First of all, disclosable interest. None? No. Well, if you do during the meeting, just say so. Party whipping arrangements.
No.
Members of the public, that means we don't get together by parties or any other groups to decide how we're going to vote. It's all done on the evening. Right, a bit of housekeeping for you. If the fire alarm rings, it won't be a practice, so please go out the way you come in. Don't go out that way because stairs are very, very slippy. Please switch your mobile devices to silent. If they go off, there's a charge to the chairman of charity. If it's a horrible ring, it's £10. If it's a better one, it's £5. And she could do with some more money. So leave them on if you want to pay some money. The proceedings are being recorded. Speakers will have 3 minutes. After that, you'll be told to wind up, and that is the only opportunity for you to speak. Please don't clap, hiss, boo, wave your arms or shout. I'm sure you're not going to. And the last point is you'll see officers talking at the same time you're talking. They're talking to each other, which looks like bad manners. They're trying to get answers to the points you're making. That's the reason why they're talking. So to continue on, there are no applications withdrawn or delegated. So we go straight to the first application, which is Stowe. We will talk about both applications together, as they're both for the same place on the listed building law, but we will take the votes separate. Over to you, officers.
Thank you, Chairman. Home Farm comprises an early 18th century farmhouse, which is also great to a listed building. A two-storey property with attic and cellar on the accommodation as well, which is situated on a high ground on the south-west edge of the village above the Stowe. The building is situated on the west side of Francis Road, which is a narrow single vehicle lane which leads off the main village above the Stowe. The lane slopes down from the main street and Home Farm is situated on the bend at the bottom. The house stands gable end to the highway, and the front elevation is contained by a small garden which overlooks the former outbuildings. These buildings have since been converted into individual dwellings. An historic stone wall situated on the east side of the curtilage, forming the curtilage boundary between the dwelling and the highway, and is elevated above the grass or above the street on a grass bank. This application seeks to construct an underground garage and workshop and formation of openings in the stone boundary wall. The proposed attached garage and workshop will be located in the rear garden of the dwelling house and will be accessed via a newly constructed entrance drive from Francis Road. The proposal itself will measure approximately 8.25 metres wide, 6.7 metres deep and 2.9 metres high from the changing ground level. It consists of two garage doors on the front elevation, fronting the highway, with a single pedestrian gate located between the dwelling house and the garage to allow for access to the rear garden. This proposal will involve demolition of existing stone curtilage boundary wall, which you can see from the photographs, which borders Francis Road to accommodate the garage. Though the garage walls themselves will not be highly visible, the garage doors and a rebuilt boundary wall will be very visible from Francis Road. Officer had regard to the submitted reports, but strongly considered the proposal to demolish the historic stone wall and to rebuild a wall associated with the construction of the underground garage and the new vehicle access would cause harm to the setting of the listed building and the positive contribution it makes to the character and distinctiveness of this part of the settlement. The demolition of the existing wall would result in substantial harm to its significance. we should note that the applicant's intention is to reuse some of the stone from the demolished door to construct a new garage. However, officers considered the introduction of new openings of a modern contemporary design along the length of the reconstructed floor, together with the major excavation works associated with the construction of the underground garage and the regrading of the substantial brass bank in front of the wall to create the driveway, would materially change the appearance of the wall and its role as a means of enclosure for the rear garden of the listed farmhouse. The immediate locality and street scene would be adversely affected as a result of the proposal, with the raised bank being significantly cut into as a result of the works and associated with access. The raised grass banks are traditional hilltop village features and pleasantly contribute to the setting of the village. Cutting into such banks would be visually intrusive to the landscape and the street scene, or not being seen in the context and being incongruous to the dwelling house immediate locality. We note from the reports that in 2008 another application for a detached garage, workshop and store and construction of access was refused by this authority. That particular application was also dismissed on appeal. The applicant inspector dealing with the application made the following reference: I recognise that there is very little space in front of the dwellings, and that with the significant change in levels between Francis Road and the rear garden of Home Farm, the possibility of constructing a garage at the lower level where it would have the least impact on the garden would be attractive. They also acknowledge desirability for off-street parking, and parking on the grass verge at the side of the property is regrettable and is itself harmful to the setting of the listed building. In this case, it's likely the boundary wall, the high banking, and the informal rural character of the lane are important and contribute significantly to the setting of the listed building and the surrounding area. And in my opinion, the erosion of these features by the insertion of the new access, garage and store would be extremely damaging. I consider the impact on the view down from Francis Road would be devastating, with side boundary and banking having excavated, plus the demolition and rebuilding of the traditional stone wall being replaced with a wide vehicle display, a new side access and two garage doors. Whilst I recognise the building itself would otherwise be concealed, it's my view that the layout and form of access would be in conflict with the policies which seek to ensure that new development blends well with the site and its surroundings. I recognise that on-street parking could be beneficial in terms of highway safety. However, this is a quiet cul-de-sac in which there appears to be generally little traffic, and I do not consider that such benefit would outweigh the considerable harm proposed to cause the character and appearance of the land and the setting of the listed buildings. I therefore conclude that the development would be in conflict with national and local policies designed to protect the historical environment. You'll note from the report that a local board member has made reference to the proposal and that the proposal would offer a possible solution getting 4 cars off the road in this instance is more important than a very insignificant reason that the listed builders have put forward in not doing so. I'd like to draw members' attention that no evidence has been provided with this application that 4 cars are associated with home farms, and that 4 cars would potentially be parked within the garage if approved. If approved, this proposal simply provides potential for 2 cars to park on the site. It was not necessarily remove 4 vehicles from the public highway. The suggestion that the high-risk issue and that this is purely a high-risk issue and the heritage issues are concerned related to this proposal are insignificant are incorrect. Officers, as with members, have a statutory duty to consider the impacts on setting up listed buildings, and such considerations are by no means insignificant. The concerns of the local highway authorities of site police support were passed on to the agent. However, no members or additional information has been received to demonstrate the requirements of the highway authority may be achieved, nor has information been submitted to demonstrate the impacts on meeting such requirements. Notwithstanding officers' concerns regarding the impacts on the listed building, the concerns of the highways officer remain to be addressed, and members should be satisfied that the proposal before members tonight is achievable in terms of meeting the highway requirements and ensuring that both pedestrian and highway safety is not compromised. In regard to these concerns, the recent session of the officer's report, officers consider the application cannot be supported and are recommending this application be refused. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. We have 2 speakers. Mrs. Henley from the Parish Council. You're first. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, my name is Mrs. Handy and I am the Chair of Stonehenge Churches Parish Council. Stonehenge Churches Parish Council supports this application for the construction of the underground garage because it will resolve the long-standing highways issue associated with insufficient parking on a blind bend on a single-track road. When permission was granted for conversion of the farm buildings to separate dwellings, insufficient consideration was given to the likely parking and access needs of all properties. As a consequence, there was not enough space for all parties to park their vehicles within the curtilage of their dwellings, which results in congestion in the lane and blocking of some accesses. Additional parking space in the form of an underground garage would benefit both the applicant and the adjacent properties where parking space is at a premium. This application is in line with the requirements of the recently published but yet to be adopted village design statement through the provision of off-street parking. The garage and subsequent remediation works to the wall are sympathetically designed in our opinion, and they take account of and minimise the impact on the adjacent listed buildings. The parish council and the immediate neighbours to the application site consider that the listed buildings consent should be granted and the planning application approved.
Thank you. And the second speaker is Mr. Hawkins, who's the agent.
Brian Hawkins, agent.
Okay.
Thank you. The original farm was separated into 4 homes about 40 years ago. Parking provided for the principal farmhouse under this separation comprised of a shared access driveway located to the front of the property, not an ideal situation. Mr. Newitt has lived in the farmhouse for almost 20 years and has sympathetically restored it with close liaison with previous and current conservation officers. He's proud of his home, its history and its location, and has become an integral part of the village community. Since the original separation of the farm, public transport facilities have decreased in rural areas and car ownership has increased, thereby creating a need for additional car parking within Upper Stowe. Francis Road, as you can see from the photos, is a very narrow rural lane with raised verges and stone walls which define its character. However, this also results in no off-road parking capabilities whatsoever, with cars just parked randomly wherever needs be. This is a well-used lane serving a number of houses, along with access to the working fields adjacent to the farm at the bottom of the lane. Previous applications have been submitted in an attempt to redress the balance and provide further parking behind the farm, and it was noted by an appeal inspector on one of these occasions that off-street parking would be beneficial in terms of highway safety in such a narrow lane. The current application comprises of a submerged garage set below the rear garden behind the farm, with 2 single-width garage doors set into the stone wall, with a narrow, gentle sloping access through the grass verge, maintaining the contours of the grass verge up to those drive accesses. The submerged design results in the complete retention of views into and out of the site, with no impact on the listed building, and only 2 garage door openings formed within the stone wall. The garage doors have been located so as to avoid the existing utility pole and grit bin, with narrow driveways sloping down to the road, with clear visibility onto the narrow lane. And the additional information has been provided regarding these highway issues previously. The scheme will result in provision of on and off-street parking for Mr. Newitt and his visitors without compromising highway safety or access into and out of Francis Road. The scheme has been designed to avoid negative visual and structural impact on the listed building and to avoid negative visual impact to the street scene. The resultant impact to the street scene will be the addition of the timber-boarded garage doors set within the stone wall, a typical feature of rural villages. We feel this is an appropriate solution, retaining the character of the street scene, the setting of the listed building, retaining the existing levels to the rear garden, maintaining the dominance of the stone wall, the grass verge, and it provides local public benefit, improving parking and highway safety. The scheme has local support with immediate neighbours, all of whom will benefit from the reduced parking pressures. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Local member wishing to speak, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's fairly rare that a planning application comes before the committee approved for rejection when actually the parish council and all of the neighbours are in support of the plan. I would simply highlight the fact that the plan has been designed to absolutely minimise the impact upon the adjacent listed building. I would draw members' attention to the wall, which is actually, I would say, somewhat out of character with the rest of the property. It isn't of a special visual impact. It's dilapidated in appearance, and as members will have seen previously, if you go around the corner further down Francis Row, there are already a collection of modern houses further down the street. We're talking about a secluded part of the village, not one of significant visual impact as people drive through the village, and I believe that the plans as they are presented before the committee go as far as anyone possibly can to put forward plans that should be approved by a committee when we're talking about a listed building. The building itself will remain unaffected. We're talking about an adjoining wall, and ultimately I believe that the highways arguments should draw great resonance with the committee, as this is going to go and solve a long-running problem within the village. I visited that part of Stowe on several occasions. There are, generally speaking, cars parked along that lane. They do pose problems for passing traffic. As I said before, there are several houses further down on Francis Row, and I believe that this plan has great virtue, and obviously it has the support of neighbours and the parish council. So whilst officers have clearly put forward reasons for rejection, we're often told that the planning regime is permissive. I would argue, therefore, that we should be permissive in this instance and approve the plans for as they stand.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Committee. Well, that's quieting everybody down. Councillor James.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've read this report through, and I've listened to what Councillor Brown has said, and I've got to admit, in my opinion, that the removal of a part of that wall would cause less than substantial harm to that listed building. And I think that what harm, if any, is caused is outweighed by public consideration. I really do. We can read the comments of the parish council, which are quite clear that they think that it is appropriate and relevant, and it is their village, and they understand the parking issues in villages like Stowe, as those villages now are. So I think that any harm, if any, it is after all a random rubble stone wall, squared and brought into force, if you know. And if you're not part of that gang, and if you have to point at it, within about 3 years, it looks like it's been there since '88. It really does. So I think that this is an acceptable proposal, and I would certainly be prepared to propose against officers' advice on this occasion and pass both applications.
We're talking about the first one, Trustee.
Yeah.
So that's a proposal.
Yes.
And the planning reason is?
The planning reason is that any harm, the harm is less than substantial, and it's outweighed by the substantial public benefit.
I'm sure the officer will come back at that, isn't he? Apparently we need to know what the public benefit is.
It removes cars from the street in an area where the presence of cars on the street would constitute an accident, and also look unsightly too.
Thank you. Do you have a second? Councillor Wesley, you were demonstrating next anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Councillor James on this. I mean, I looked at the pictures. I understand that it's the value of the house, but I mean, let's just look at the wall at the front of the house there. I mean, that's obviously been revamped, straightened, and is ostensibly a modern wall, and unlike the older wall in front of it, and unlike the older wall over the road. The partial demolition of that wall, I mean, at the end of the day, it's got a grit bin in front of it and a telegraph pole. It's, you know, not exactly the aesthetic that you would expect. And I understand that they still stay there, but you know, that part of it isn't well, I won't say beautiful. I'm struggling to see the value of that wall along with Councillor James. I mean, I don't know how old it is or anything, but it's certainly, again, not similar to the other walls. It's all a little bit of a mishmash anyway. And there's already been modern buildings built around it. So, the house stands as it is, and it's a lovely house, and I'm sure it's a benefit to the village. And I really don't think there's any detriment in actually trying to help people that live in the locality in terms of just safety and ease of access. And you can see that any cars parked there are going to cause difficulties. Okay, tell people not to park there, but where are they going to go? Yeah, I have to say, yes, I agree with Councillor James and happy to second.
Thank you. I think John wants to go back.
There's been some mention about the wall and that the wall is insignificant. This reminder that the wall just formed part of the listing of this particular building. You have a statutory duty to consider the protection of this as part of that listing. Equally, we have before us tonight details of an appeal decision whereby the situation remains the same. Members have to ask themselves, since that appeal decision, what has changed?
Thank you. Right, go on to the next speaker, Councillor Irving Swift.
Yes, unfortunately, I will go against Councillor James. What concerns me was the wall. You can decide if it's a nice wall or not. I do think it's a nice wall. And you have critically it's not the best time of the year. But what concerns me more is the slope in front of that wall. And I made a mention of the gradient. And if you change that little bank, you will be faced by quite a substantial change of the nature of the lane. So on top of the listed building, the listed building setting will be very different with the entrance of the two garages. I think it is regrettable, and normally I live in a listed house, so I feel sometimes the constraints are rather stringent on the listed. But when you buy a house, you know it's listed, you know that the cartilage is listed. And unfortunately, I do think that in that respect, the officer, and when you see the appeal that was 10 years ago or even less, the appeal dismissed again, and nothing has changed, except that since the appeal, the condition on listed houses has been reinforced, and you have to really prove that is less than substantial harm and the public benefit. And in that case, I have a problem to find that. I am willing to be proven wrong, but that is my view.
Thank you. Councillor Organ.
Yeah, I think we should take this case on its own merits, to be honest. We can hark back to the past. I think sometimes that helps, but sometimes I think it's unhelpful. And looking at the current circumstances and the current application, I've been in here long enough to see circumstances change and times change, and we make a decision based on this application before us. But there is a fine balance here between a practical solution to the parking issues in the area and whatever we say about that wall, this is quite a significant development and construction in that area on that building. And I think it's a balance for us to decide on, is the bang worth the buck, I suppose? Is all that work on this building, on this heritage site, Grade 2 listed building, is it actually worth it? Is it actually not going to cause the significant harm to the setting, etc.? Now, we've argued, I remember falling into the trap of arguing that we should be protecting these buildings, and we've allowed things to happen. and I was quite peeved at that time because I was trying to fulfil my duty to protect these buildings. But on this case, I think this is quite substantial. I think I do respect the parish council. I think you have a significant problem, as we do over the whole district with parking, and this is an innovative, proactive idea to try and deal with it. But the problem is at what cost? And I feel that I have to go with officers on this one. Purely because of the extent of the works that's going to be required for these garages, and I just hope there are other ways of resolving the ongoing parking issues in that area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Chaplin.
Thank you, Chairman. We can't allow this, Chairman. It's against policy and against the law, basically. We do have a statutory duty to conserve and enhance listed structures, possibly to make alternative use of them. Don't be fooled by the terms less than substantial. Less than substantial harm doesn't mean that it's insignificant. This is part of the listed structure, and to demolish part of it is substantial harm to that part of it, and less than substantial harm overall. That's by definition, but it's against our policies and against the public view and the Historic England's view that this is too harmful. The public benefit does not outweigh that harm, and so I can't support the proposal, Chairman. I would support the officer's advice in this case.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Councillor Parker.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to, through you, Chair, ask the officers, just for clarification, the previous application, which I think was 2003, is it basically the same as what we're looking at the moment? And also, looking at the photographs, the garage is going to be built close to that wall, which I'm assuming is the curtilage of the property. Would there be sufficient visibility space coming out onto the road?
I think if I could just answer the first part of it. Fundamentally, there are very little differences between this application and the 2003 application in terms of the actual openings of the garages, in terms of the provision of pedestrian access inside, and in terms of the actual position of the garage, which is underground compared to the ground level on the other side of the wall. The main difference is that the previous application there was an indication of how the actual banking, the access was going to be achieved. There were retaining walls provided, etc. Clearly on this particular application there are still fundamental concerns voiced by the highways officer because there is insufficient information provided as to how that access is to be achieved. You'll see from their concerns that there are a number of issues. There are issues regarding visibility display. There are issues regarding the gradient. There are also issues regarding utilities. Of course, officers have forwarded these concerns onto the agents for them to consider and to address, but today we don't have that information.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. I have some sympathy with those who say, well, look, this wall is not the most beautiful thing. It may be old and it may be interesting and it may be worth preserving. But I can't say that it is one of the, the most attractive features of the village. It's been argued that the public benefit would be in reducing the number of cars and reducing parking problems. I visited this village on quite a number of occasions. I admit that I've never been there during the rush hour. But I wonder if the officers can tell us that when these photographs were taken, did they need to go around asking people to move cars out of the way so that we could see our Daventry road? I'm just not aware. I argued against many planning applications because there is not a provision for parking. But then just find it difficult to believe that the need for extra parking in this village, in this particular bit of it, is such that we need to be making a gap in a wall that we ought to be protecting. I wonder if you can tell me, is there any actual hard evidence for the nature of the parking problem at this corner?
I could answer that if given permission to.
I don't know who said that, but you can't.
No.
If it wasn't the councillor, no.
Joe can respond if you wish, Chair.
Sorry?
Joe can respond.
Joe?
I just want to come back regarding the parking issue. I have heard quite a lot of debate about the proposal itself will result in the public benefit being that it will take cars off the road. I do want to draw your attention back to the highway comments. The Highway Authority have not said or supported this proposal, citing that, yes, we will support the proposal in principle as it will remove cars from the highway which are currently presenting a problem. What they have said is that we are concerned about how such a proposal will be achieved.
Thank you.
And if I can also confirm, whenever planning officers go and take photographs on site, they never ask people to move cars, so we can we take the pictures on the day when we get there, whether there's cars there or not. That's a fact.
It was been there.
I think if members looked at that picture there, you could see that the car's been on the front, because you can see car marks, but I can't see any car marks up the road because it'd be too steep to go on half the road and half the bank.
And on the Google Earth picture in front of you now, which is from 2009, there's some tracking at the edge of the road, but there's not really much sign of birds.
Just outside where it is.
Okay, Councillor James, you indicate you want to speak again.
Yes, a couple of points. I'd like to come back to the planning officer who said, well, it's changed since the appeal. Well, the appeal is 2003, according to the documentation.
That's correct. And fundamentally, policies relating to heritage and listed buildings have, if anything, become stronger.
Well, I dispute that to the extent that since 2003, the reason for the introduction of the National Planning Policy Framework was, of course, to introduce a bit of flexibility. And flexibility is something that we desperately need these days. Intransigence gets people nowhere at all. And the real benefit to the village is this, that most of our villages, some of the attractive villages, conservation villages, are rapidly becoming car parks. And this usually happens at the weekends when the relatives and others turn up. For instance, if you go to Everton, people aren't in the boozer, they're in the village hall. They park on the pavements, it's unsightly, and it detracts from listed buildings. Indeed, of itself in Everton is detracted from by reason of cars being parked here, there and everywhere. And I think the same applies here. And the issue of public safety is what happens if the police or the fire brigade or any of the other emergency services want to get there and cars are parked in the way. It really is a public benefit to try wherever possible to alleviate car parking, particularly in the villages. And it's not just the villages, I might add. Only this last week we've been discussing car parking problems in Daventry town itself. We have to recognise that in recent years car ownership has expanded. It's difficult, it's making life difficult not only for people that own the cars, but for other people who want to get past the cars.
Thank you, Councillor James. I think we've had a good discussion on that. We have a proposal, the application be approved. It's been seconded. Those in favour, please show. 2. Those against. We're talking about the first application, the non-building, right? So all the rest are against. No, we need one the other way, don't we?
That's what we're still trying to do, yes.
Yes.
I have a proposal to accept.
Propose the application be refused. as per officer's advice. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Chandler. All those in favour, please show.
6, 7, 8, 9.
Those against? Right, the first application is refused. Now we're on the second application, which is the listed building application. I need a proposal from some Councillor Swift.
I propose to go with officer advice.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Chandler again.
Sorry, Chair, can I just ask a question? Can I just ask, I'm not quite understanding why we're voting on two. Can someone just give me an explanation as to why they're
It's what we always do. We would normally deal with them both separately because they're two separate applications. But at the beginning I said we discuss both of them and then vote separately on them.
Yeah, through you, Chairman. One is a planning application, one is a listed building.
Right, and you need both to complete.
Two separate
There
ones.
are two
Yeah.
applications.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, all those in favour of that, please show that the application be refused. Okay, those against? The application is refused. The next application is in Hannington at 0846.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the replacement of an existing house on a site within the existing village of Hannington. The area is slightly larger than the existing house, especially to the east and potentially slightly over to the north, but it's still pretty much within the overall area of the existing house. This is a revised application following a recent refusal, which now officers consider the impact is significantly reduced and has overcome the previous reasons for refusal. Yes, the proposal is more of a modern style of property, but because it's different than other properties within Hannington doesn't mean it will have a detrimental impact on the locality. The property is situated sufficient distances away from other neighbours not to cause a harmful impact to their amenities. Members will note on late representations that there is concern regarding the red line. However, the applicants have provided evidence of ownership and the details do seem correct. Regardless of ownership, whether there's an ownership dispute, the planning merit should be considered on their own basis. Planning does not override any legal restriction. We have also received amended plans as raised in the officer's report, demonstrating that the impact on roof lights is significantly reduced from the previous submission. The application is now acceptable in officer's mind and therefore is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. One speaker, Mr. Lyons, who's the agent. Okay, so you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Tom Lyons. I'm a chartered architect and senior partner with GSS Architecture. Although the application you have in front of you this evening is recommended for approval, we wanted to speak tonight just because we felt there were a few points in the report that would assist in your decision making, that if we put them into context. And there are also some matters in the report that are not strictly correct, just to avoid any confusion or any misconstrued points. We thought we'd just like to clarify them for you this evening to support the officer's recommendation for approval. Firstly, in context, as agent for Mr. and Mrs. Hirschwright, their intention and their goal is and has always been to create a family home in a village in Northamptonshire and to move their family into that location. Having purchased this site, this is what they have set out to do with creating the family home. In doing so, they have consulted and worked with the wider community in Haddington. That's included events and meeting the neighbours or the new neighbours in the village hall on a couple of occasions to explain what their proposals were and to understand any concerns that anyone might have and see how we could actually address them. That has resulted in an original application which, as your officer has already pointed out, was originally refused. It was refused on the basis of scale. That was the reason for refusal. Although we might not have agreed with that, we have actually worked with the authority, with the officers, with your landscape consultants, etc., to develop something that would actually work with the scale of the property. Consequently, we now have a 2-storey building, not a 2.5-storey building, as opposed to a part 3-storey building, which is what was there before. We've lowered the building, we've reduced the scale of it, and obviously to the satisfaction of the authority, hence the recommendation. Actually, as pointed out, although the floor area of the building might be marginally larger than the existing architecturally challenged 1960s house that's there, it is actually a smaller footprint than that house, and it is actually set further back into the village and away from the edge of the village than the current house is as well, having less of an impact. Now, the other points that do need clarification is that Haddington Parish Council have resubmitted their objections from the previous planning application on the basis that they didn't consider this application was any different to the original. Clearly it is. It's now a 2-storey building rather than a part 3-storey building. So the reasons that they have put back in are actually not planning considerations and are not relevant to this application. But just to clarify that, they have pointed out that there's no difference between the original application, clearly there is, it's a 2-storey, not a 3-storey, that the paddock's not part of the garden. Well, the paddock doesn't form part of this application, neither does the red line. They were asking about works in the pond area. There is no proposed works in the pond area, and the pond area doesn't even form part of the planning application site either. And they're also highlighted that they want about any possible footpath diversion. There is no footpath diversion as part of this application.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Right. Councillor first.
There's 2 things. There is not a footpath, relocation of footpaths. I know it's not a planning matter, but if there is a relocation of footpath, previous experience is very, very difficult. Now, about the red line, is that the red line in planning term? Yeah. So we need to keep that, and it's whatever we decide. I am very, because if we put the whole site on the red line, that could be a big on the whole site. So the red line is very important for us. Is that for that reason that planning officer put the red line, please? Could I have clarification on that point?
Yes, through you, Chairman. The red line is pretty much the existing residential space. It does not include the paddock land to the north. Yes, originally, in the original submission, the applicants did include that area, but in this submission, they haven't included it in the area. It's pretty much, as you can see, it's where the existing house is slightly larger, but given where it is, we consider it's okay.
Can I come back to the officer? So with the red line, because the outside the red line is not part of the planning application, is that still enough? Because now the plot is much smaller, and you do not consider it's an overdevelopment of the plot?
No, it's pretty much, it's on the same footprint as the existing house. The existing house has been extended many times. Just because it's larger, i.e. upwards, then around the hole doesn't mean it sort of encroaches. The red line ensures that the red line is the residential curtilage. The blue line shows what the applicant actually does own as well. So, but we consider that not residential curtilage.
Okay. Councillor Rowley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I do always appreciate when developers work with officers in trying to resolve issues, especially when an application has been previously refused. and I'm disappointed that the parish council didn't make any sort of reference to that, the fact that it was different, and there had been some work done to ensure that this application was on probably legal terms in the opinion of our officers an acceptable proposal. So in this case, Chair, I'd like to propose we go with officers' advice on this application. Yeah, we can go with it, thank you.
Do you have a second then? I think you were just there first. Would you like to say anything or not?
Just second it.
Okay. Councillor Ritchie.
Chair, I feel I need a bit more explanation of this application. I'm looking at page 38, where you set out the words that appear in so many of these reports. The Daventry District Local Plan. Planning permission will normally be granted, provided, amongst other things, development is of a type, scale and design in keeping with the locality. You make the point that the fact that this is a modern building, a modern design, does not necessarily mean that it should not be allowed. I accept that. The following paragraph, EN 42 concerns the design of development. It talks about the need for designs that reinforce local distinctiveness, enhance their surroundings, designs that take account of local building conditions and materials, and so on. I just can't see how, given the fact that these are our policies, how you can justify anything that, the word that comes to my mind is vulgar, as as that design for a house. It just strikes me as totally out of character. I would like to hear from the officers how they felt that they could write that, and then come around and say that they felt that this is something that should be, that should be approved.
Just to put it right, that's your opinion that you think it's vulgar, obviously. To be fair, other people might think it looks far better than what's on there already. So to be fair to the architect who's talking about it, and probably designed it, I think it's unfair to call it vulgar necessarily, but he will accept that that's your opinion on it. Okay, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. If you actually see the pictures, the existing house isn't exactly a traditional style character to the local vernacular either. Sort of the Hammington is quite more traditional. We've also have to have regard to the NPPF. Paragraph 127 says also, we should not prevent or discourage appropriate innovation or change. We, as officers, consider it does not relate to that person, in fact. And also paragraph 130 of the framework, permission should not be refused for poor designs that fail to take in the opportunities for improving the character and quality of the area and the way it functions. Now, the existing property is a bit run down. There are other 1960s, 70s buildings to the north, or sorry, to the south and east of the site. In the sense an officer's mind, it's actually an improvement to what is there as existing. So that's the basis for the recommendation. It is acknowledged that it is not in keeping with the more traditional style of properties within Hammington. But in this particular case, it's considering what's there at the moment, this is an improvement. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Do you wish to go back, Councillor Ritchie, or not?
I sense we have a difference of opinion.
You're getting a very good sense of humour on this one.
Very dry.
All right, anybody else wish to speak? Right, we have a proposal the application be approved, which has been seconded. All those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Those against? 2. The application is approved. and it's 0930.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the installation of a glass and wood door to the north porch area to the church in Stratton. At present, the porch has an iron gate, as you'll see by the photographs, which still gives an openness impression. Both the conservation area officer as well as the Historic England object to the proposal. The applicant has sought to try and overcome the concerns, however it's more the in principle of enclosing a porch with something as proposed. The photos before some members tonight do show how other churches in the vicinity have carried out similar, but it just shows different options and which could be considered. A church porch in medieval times was for evening wedding ceremonies, laying a coffin in, and also an area of rest for pilgrims. This area will be lost as a result of the proposal. There is harm to the designated heritage asset. This harm is considered to be less than substantial. Therefore, the benefits of the scheme, which have to be weighed against this harm. Officers consider the benefits are limited and do not outweigh the harm. This application is therefore recommended for refusal.
If I might clarify through you, Chairman, I'm showing you photographs of other examples of enclosed. So not the church. The first photographs are this church, the ones that followed other local examples of enclosed.
One in Church Brampton and in Great Brinton.
Okay. Right, we have two speakers. First of all, Mr. Hunt from the Parish Council.
Thank you, Chairman. Clearly the question of the church being a very special heritage asset is the main consideration in this application. Paragraph 192 of the National Planning Policy Framework sets out the criteria as to what constitutes the heritage asset. In subparagraphs A, putting them to uses consistent with their conservation, B, giving a positive contribution to sustainable communities, including their economic vitality, and C, the desirability for a positive contribution to local character and distinctiveness. The Parish Council believes that the new door will positively support each of these points which the committee has to consider. The church services have very few regular attendees and is maintained only through the efforts of a very dedicated clergy who cover 8 parishes under the Uplands Group, as well as a number of volunteers. The more open and friendly the church is experienced by all of the village, the more the number of residents will go to the services, as well as the social functions there. As everyone knows, an increasing number of churches throughout the country are closing, and Stratton is determined that it should not happen to their church. To that end, over recent years, it has installed a toilet and storeroom and a successful kitchen and coffee shop, which brings regular attendances by villagers and visitors. The church and the tables and chairs for the cafe are used for village meetings and such gatherings as the monthly lunch club, and the parish council uses it for meetings at times. If the church did not attract villagers other than regular churchgoers, there is no doubt that it would sooner or later go the way of numerous derelict or converted churches around the country. And I know that our local vicar would agree with that. The new door is simply another one of the improvements to the church with minimum impact on the architectural heritage, which will make it more welcoming to the public in terms of appearance and comfort inside the church. It does not affect the structure of the existing stone, which will remain completely intact in its original state. As one of the main aims of the Parish Council is to support all efforts to enhance the community spirit in the village, it respectfully requests that the application be granted so that the church is allowed to play an important role in achieving this aim. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Now Mr Bennett, who's down as the applicant.
Thank you. I'm David Bennett and I represent the sponsors and other voluntary organisations that work in St Andrews. We all serve the greater community. The issue to resolve here is about principle, to which the case officer seeks your guidance. Can you approve outer doors to a Victorian porch? When we look at the north porch, we see a deteriorating asset which cries out to be cherished and integrated. The officers see a porch in isolation and talk about conservation in generic terms, but theirs is not the whole picture. For example, did the Victorians ever envisage a loo in a church or a coffee shop in a church? Yet these have greatly helped sustain the asset and build relevance for the community. We say that the alleged harm is at the bottom end of that spectrum, and we have demonstrated that the medieval aspect of heritage is not quite as the local HE would surmise. And certainly at St Andrews, where the south door was in use for much of its early history. Therefore, heritage harm is even more finely balanced. We also know that HE nationally do accept the principle in similar circumstances, and some of the photographs show that. Over 2 years, we have worked with our DAC on the principles, options and designs. And despite negative local HE advice then, the DAC have given outline approval for our current proposals, subject only to local authority planning. They have profound experience of ecclesiastical architectural heritage and have determined on balance that there is greater benefit versus harm to their church, and I think that's very significant. The compelling community benefits include better use of floor space, sustainable energy retention, welcoming visitor space, etc. Enhancing the actual heritage asset and bringing attention to it, and officers please note that, securing optimal viable use for the building as HE advice and guidelines, and a fully reversible proposal. Now, St Andrews has changed over time. It's not a museum, and it needs to continue to be relevant. We regret we appear at odds with officers, but you will know that there are many ways of interpreting the planning clauses referred to, and which can be fairly and reasonably used to support our case. Improving economic, social and environmental conditions is only one of those, which comes to mind. It depends where you start from and where you look. So, potential heritage harm is low, our support is high, we have lots of signatures to this, the principle is precedent, the benefits are many. So it's not so finely balanced really, in our opinion, but emphatically in our favour, may I suggest. We really do need these outer doors, so for St Andrews and our community, we sincerely hope you agree. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Right, local councillor is Councillor Beck, so may you speak now, young lady.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, for letting me speak tonight. I support this application tonight. The principal issue is that proposals would cause harm to the significance of the church, but the harm would be less than substantial. I understand harm here means a change for the worse or an impact on the significance of the building. An important consideration would be whether any adverse impact which comes from the proposals would seriously affect a key element of the church's special architectural or historic interest. I cannot see that the proposals will lead to harm or loss of significance to the church. How do you cause harm to the significance of something? By the simple addition of weather-proofed glazed doors. The point about proposals affecting a key element of the church. Historic England claims that the medieval principle of open porches to churchyards is a heritage asset exemplified by this church in Stratton. My understanding, however, is that the north porch was not historically the main entrance to the porch. It was not originally intended as the main entrance, and it was the south entrance that historically played a major part in the church life. At St Andrews, it's clear that the south and western entrances were in more favourable use in medieval times. This can be seen with the ornate embellishments to the stonework arches at the south door, by the presence of the medieval church cross by the south door, by the location of the medieval font by the south door, and by the priest's door to the chancel. Research also shows there have been 3 porch structures on the north side, each one larger than the previous, and that these improvements were made in the 18th and 19th centuries. Prior to these times, the south entrance was very much in favour, as was the norm. So the north porch was previously a smaller and less significant porch prior to 1822. And before that, there was no porch at all, and the south entrance was more significant. It's very unlikely that the north porch itself is of great architectural significance. It was built in 1847 by Gilbert Scott at the same time as many others by him across the country. And I visited the church recently and saw there are many much earlier and more unique assets inside the church, in particular the tomb of Sir John Swynford. The proposals, in my view, do not affect a key element of the church's special architectural or historical interest. Also, as the applicant just stated, my understanding is the design of the porch is fully reversible, meaning there would be no permanent damage to the church. Under the Joint Core Strategy Policy, BN5, any development proposal should sustain and enhance the heritage and landscape features of the area and show an appreciation and understanding of any impact. In my view, this is a well thought out design that can be reversed, if necessary, without damage or harm. The design is in keeping with the building and the locality. I know the group involved in this have been working for 6 years on sympathetic community-inspired alterations, and their priority is, and it has always been, to conserve the building and optimise its use. There's also a high level of justification for the work to be done. The new porch will not affect the historic fabric of the church. The proposals will protect the porch from external elements, will create a welcoming lobby area for the increasing number of visitors, will insulate the heat within the main nave area in winter and prevent cold external air entering when visitors arrive. The proposals will also maximise usable floor area and optimise the assets of the building. Mr Chairman, the improvements can only benefit the church, making the north porch weatherproof and creating an attractive entrance lobby facility for visitors. I can only see public benefits of the proposals, which will help secure the optimum use of the church and help preserve the building for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. Well, I don't know which one of you was first. We'll go for you.
I can see how the officer has arrived at this finely balanced decision, right? Because you have no choice to apply the policy in these paragraphs that you mentioned here. But this is a strange one, isn't it? Because as I understand it, the vicar likes this proposal, the congregation like it, the community like it, the village like it, the PCC like it, the church wardens, the parish council, and the elected district council like it. Now, I've never been to a church service in Stratton, perhaps never will, and I don't know how many of you guys have, but if we try and tell all those people that they're wrong and that we're right, I mean, who are we to do that? It would be extraordinary if we didn't do what they want, which is to allow this to go ahead. So I'd be happy to propose it, that we go against officer's advice and approve the application.
Right, do you have a second? I don't know which one. I think the Vice Chairman was just first. Yeah. Vice Chairman, you wish to say anything?
Yes, I mean, I support everything that's just been said in actual fact. I think we've got to remember that churches evolved, don't they, and what it's being used for now to what they were 200 or 300 years ago. They're an asset and they've got to be maximised like anything else. And I think that's what the community are trying to do. I think the thing is, it is finely balanced because indeed the case officer says that in the summary. So if you look at the final paragraph, I mean, I would say that I would support what the previous speaker said on the basis that, subject to design, joinery and material details being agreed, that needs to be done. So that's what I would add to that proposal.
Thank you. Are you willing to accept the addition to that proposal? And also I need the planning reason to reverse it.
Less than substantial
from one of you.
Less than substantial harm.
Right.
Yeah, we.
Okay. So you're happy with that? Yeah. Right. Okay. So that's been proposed and second. The next speaker I've got is Councillor Wesley, then Councillor Charter after that.
Not me.
Not you, Councillor Webster, Councillor Chancellor.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, Chairman, as Heritage Champion, I normally support officers' advice when it comes to heritage assets. I know this church very well. I used to visit it frequently when I was able to ring the bells. No longer able, of course, so I can't. And I would like to underline what has been said already about the use of the North Porch. Traditionally, entrance to churches was by the South Porch, and the North Porch was reserved and often called the Vicar's entrance, because it was right opposite the clergy house, the rectory, or vicarage, depending on the exact nature. I must say, Chairman, I like the revised design better than the original, and I was pleased to see that. And I do think that this is a useful and sensible thing to do. And also bear in mind that, in common with most work that is done on listed churches, it's fully reversible. It has to be, because you won't get permission from various bodies if it isn't. So that's the original design, which I don't like, but we do have, I think, a picture of that one. Yes, I think that's more in keeping, and it mirrors some of the other designs within the church itself, which I think is appropriate. So, unusually for me, Chair, I'm going to go against officers' advice on this.
Thank you. Councillor Auger first. Now coming back to the planning officer.
Yeah, I sort of disagree with one of the speakers. I think it is actually finely balanced, this. I don't think that there is either side wins this battle easily. And I know there's a lot of subjectivity and opinion and interpretation here, and the argument can be swung both ways. Now, one of the greatest assets we have in this country are our churches. You know, my wife and myself adore going and visiting these. You know, sometimes, you know, they're close to 1,000 years old, and to think about all the people that have lived and loved and worshipped in these places, it's just great to be drawn back to a place of peace. And part of that peace are these porches. I've sat in many because the doors have been locked, and being able to just open the iron bar gates and sit there with my wife and maybe just meditate for a while. And that's one of the precious features are these porches. They are just almost like a sanctuary. Get out of the summer rain and maybe have your sandwiches, as long as you pick up all the rubbish. I appreciate that. But they are special, and I think, you know, and it's opinion. I don't think this adds. I don't think it necessarily attracts people to worship God. I think it may be very functional and very desirable for that reason, but I think it actually takes something away. And I know it's an opinion, and I know it goes against the wishes of the locals, but I am on the planning committee, and I'm right to have an opinion and a view on this. So, you know, I would support refusal based on the fact I think it takes away from some of those unique things that we have in this country, and one of those are these incredible porches that are always accessible, certainly in my experience, that are open and not, you know, just an entrance hall to come and worship. It can be used by all people at all times. So, thank you, Chair.
Richie.
Thank you, Chair. I find it quite surprising that on the subject of churches, I find myself largely in agreement with what Councillor Auger has just said. I do think that churches are important sociological landmarks about how, you know, what past village life was about. And I can't actually see how putting up a bit of glass over the entrance to a church, and I fail to understand why, from a heritage point of view, it should actually matter whether you're going to put the glass over the south entrance or the north entrance. It seems to me a completely red herring of this. But I don't actually see why that should detract from a heritage angle from anybody being able to understand what the church would have looked like, what its setting would have been in centuries gone by. And so I don't actually feel terribly strongly about saying that there shouldn't be a bit of glass. I have been amazed at some of the arguments that have been put forwards about declining numbers in the church. Now, I think that if we had been shown a graph of how attendances moved through the year that demonstrated that on a warm summer's day the church was full but it was empty when it was cold and frosty, then yet there would be a good argument for saying that we have got to have we have got to have the extra insulation of a glass door. But as I see it, I find it difficult to see what what this public benefit would be in putting in a glass door. And at the same time, I can't actually see what the great damage would be if it were done. I am therefore going to abstain, but I feel the right position that I'm not abstaining out of lack of interest in the issue.
And we all respect your view on that, Councillor. Right, before we go any further, I'll just say that Long Duffy's got an identical entrance to this church, identical to the gates, the metal railings, the big doors, everything. It's identical to it. But theirs is north and south. Theirs faces the south. I quite like it. If you did go to church, I know you don't go to church, Councillor Richard, you would realise that people have got less and less and less at church, and it has got colder and colder and colder in churches, and they have to put things in churches nowadays besides religion to attract other people to go there, especially young people and children, because it's not like it was 50 years ago or several hundred years ago. Anyway, first of all, Catherine, you want to come back before we got 3 more members to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just want to come back to actually the proposal, which you're saying there's less of substantial harm and the public benefits outweigh that outweigh the harm. Now I just need to clarify what those public benefits are. Are you sort of saying there is an increased use of the existing building to make it sort of it overall historical, symbolic within the church or within the village kept, so it's more functional community space, so it brings more use? Or there is another option that if you're saying actually the actual doors are reversible, is there any harm to the actual building because they can be taken out?
Sorry, I'll go back to the proposal. I'm very happy to. Both of those, are you happy with that proposal?
I think fundamentally you need to identify one or the other. Either there is no harm because you ask, for instance, the local board member said that doors are reversible, they don't affect the fabric of the building, and therefore you're saying there is no harm identified, so there's no need to weigh the public benefits against that, or you're saying there is less substantial harm and that the public benefit is that there's greater use of a community space, which encourages greater use of it's one or the other. Really.
What I'm saying is that the customer generally right, and the customers in this case are the congregation. If they think the building is going to be better, it's going to foster, it's going to make the church services nicer, it's going to make it a nicer place to be, and therefore a more popular place, then that's good enough for me, because they're the one, it's their opinion that matters.
Okay, so that's number 2 then.
The second option.
Okay. Right, now back to the 3 speakers. We can Councillor Richard, Councillor Irving-Smith, then Councillor James.
Yes, maybe I should declare an interest because my husband is a church warden in Aldingworth, and in Aldingworth we have a port that is very similar. And what is very interesting is you say it's reversible. So could I ask if it's reversible? Because in Aldingworth we have a very nice grill like that one. So that those doors that exist at the moment are conserved somewhere. Because if it's reversible, it should be put back with the same doors. And maybe, I don't know if that is feasible, that because my daughter got married last summer and the idea of having those doors in the church that were open were lovely. So maybe if it's reversible, like in some conservatory, in the winter you put a door and in the summer you go back to the open porch. If that would be possible, that would prove that is no harm, or, and I don't know, but I go one way or the other.
Don't think that's going to be practical, Councillor Irving.
But could we make sure that we conserve the original?
I am sure they're sitting here listening. I am sure they will never throw those gates away. Yes, we have not around.
That could be added as a condition in any case.
Oh, thank you. So that's all. I am very happy.
Councillor James, then.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I start off by saying that today the church is something more than just a place of worship. Most churches now are prepared to open their doors for concerts and local community events, which I think is a wonderful idea. And if that encourages people to go to church to worship, even better still. It's all a far cry from the days when I was a lad and you'd have to go to church twice on a Sunday and also Sunday school as well. And there was no heating really in the churches in those days. Most of the time I've sat there freezing cold, and even more so in recent years. If you go to my church on the opposite side of the road where I live, I wear 2 pairs of trousers when I really do, because it's cold. And I don't want to get hot sitting on a cold seat. So, you know, and I say this, the proposal to put a door on a porch which will be energy saving and maintain heat, I think is a reasonable proposition in this day and age, and it contributes to energy saving.
And self-religion.
Well, it does. I'll tell you what my mother used to say. She used to say, put that scarf and those gloves on. And girls, 2 pairs of knickers.
You're very entertaining, Councillor James. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So
I think we have enough to have...
for the reasons put forward
people stop crying. Look, we have enough to have a vote now. We have a proposal that the application be approved, subject to the couple of added on bits. I'll call them, because they're not conditions. Well, it will be a condition. All those in agreement, please show. Those against? And 1 abstention. Okay, the application is approved.
Do you tell us subject to the conditions?
For the materials, design of the joinery details, make sure that the wood is sufficient, and also to make sure that the existing gates are kept somewhere.
So you can't just go and build one, you have to show us what wood and what it's going to look like and how you're going to do it. Thank you. Next application is in Longbutley, it's 0011.
Thank you, Chairman. The application is a modern property and it's sustained from Road in Longbutley. The proposal before members tonight is to demolish the existing single-storey rear extension and also to demolish the side garage as well, and to construct a 2-storey rear extension, a single-storey and rear extension, rear extension and also a side extension as well. You'll note from the report that there haven't been any objections from neighbours related to the impact on neighbouring properties. There have been concerns relating to parking and urban development from the parish council, and a concern for the neighbours that the plans don't accurately reflect what's on the ground. And just to give members reassurance, offers helping out and then are satisfied that the development can be accommodated on the ground as illustrated in the plans. In regards to overdevelopment, I have to draw members' attention to the history of that site itself and in the 2014, a similar two-storey extension was submitted and approved. And the current proposal before members tonight, in terms of the two-storey extension, doesn't extend beyond what was approved in 2014. So what we're looking at really is the garage replacement for a single storey, and whether or not members consider that would be an overdevelopment of the site. Officers certainly feel that this would not be, given its height and scale. Wasn't draw members' attention to the other concerns regarding the parking provision. There is no loss of parking. You'll see from the plans that the proposal does still retain 2 parking spaces, and in fact the current position is improved as the current proposal before members tonight now allows the vehicles to enter the site and exit the site in a forward manner. So in summary, the proposed extensions do not exceed what was previously approved in 2014 in terms of two-storey extension. We have no objections from neighbours in terms of impacts on their properties by reason of privacy, overlooking, etc. We don't feel that the proposed single-storey side extension would result in overdevelopment of the site. And in terms of parking provision, the proposal still maintains 2 parking spaces. Thank you, Chair. So they're recommending this application is approved.
Thank you. We have one speaker, Mrs. Barrett. You must be the only one left.
I feel a bit out of my depth here because compared to all the other applications that have been reviewed, church doors and then we come to mine, that's just...
Would you like to list your house quickly?
I'm the homeowner and I'm in favour of the application. I wanted to highlight a few points, but you've touched on most of them. So in essence, I think what the objection from the parish council is for overdevelopment. We've added the single rear, the single side extension, but in essence we're just moving the already existing garage closer to the main building to use the indoor space practically for our growing family. So really we're just moving a building in essence rather than adding. So we want to improve our home by extending our living space in order to accommodate for our growing family. The existing garage will be demolished, which is on boundary to number 33, and the proposed single-storey extension will then be situated closer to the main house, therefore moving the already existing garage, which is on the boundary, further away from the boundary line. I won't repeat everything else because the points have already been raised, but that's all I really want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Local member is me. The parish council's views were there is a large van associated with this property, not one you see on the driveway now, but it's a great big large one like the one I own. Like a great big, it isn't a Mercedes, but it's a large van. It's not like the ones you see there.
Oh, that was an ex-work van of my husband's.
Well, when that vehicle used to be there, that could cause some problems sometimes, and there's no way that could do a 3-point turn and get out of there because it's too big. So the parish council's views were that taking a garage away, they recognise that a garage can no longer be a garage. It's very often used for storage or its conversion in this case, or a new build for the house. They accept the cars, but if that big van was going to be there, you'd have a big van reversing out very close to a zebra crossing, which wasn't the nicest thing. So that's why the parish made their comments. I did tell them that wouldn't be.
Owned that van for over a year. It wasn't working.
I'm just saying what the parish council said.
It's fine.
I did advise them there isn't a planning reason to refuse it. Councillor Irving Swift first.
Well, I would propose to go with official advice.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Everybody both said it. Your 2 hands went up first. I'll take your hand, Councillor Organ.
I think that the fact that there isn't a loss of parking space and the way that it's been explained with regard to the overdevelopment issue, and also you can see it's actually, you can't park on the road there anyway because it's parked within a zebra crossing. So even if there wasn't a park, you couldn't park it on the road there. You'd have to go somewhere else. So I would agree. I think this is perfectly acceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Wish to say anything?
just wanted to put a question. You know, with every residential application that we approve, there is the possibility that somebody will live in the house who wants to bring in a large van. What on earth is the relevance of saying that there's a large van that might be here? I just feel that it should be totally irrelevant. I have often argued that when we're talking about new estates, that there ought to be effectively bylaws that exist for these estates that say where vehicles above a certain size ought to be put. But we don't have it here. This is Station Road, Long Buckby. And I just feel that references to large vans should have no place in our discussion.
Right, well actually you have to correct you. Have the large van still been present, and Lady says it isn't, so it's not a concern anymore, but had that large van been present, it is right, pedestrian crossing right outside, it's opposite the doctor's surgery with 2 exits, there's parking on the opposite side, it is terrifically dangerous, horrible place during the day, and I'm sure the applicant isn't going to get a chance to agree with me, but I'm sure she'll nod her head. If a great big long wheelbase van was going in and out of there during the day, it wouldn't be nice, would it? No, she'll nod her head.
No, I can't actually comment on that.
But it's not there anymore, so it would be a consideration in that particular case. Right, does anybody else wish to speak? No? In which case, we have a proposal, the application be approved, it's been seconded, all those in favour, please show. It's unanimous. Okay, I'll put my hand up as well. Okay, that concludes the planning meeting. Thank you for attention.